We continue now at the top of Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph and Meseches Shevuos. This is Shevuos Daf 21a. On the previous summit, the Gemara brought a brisa which said that Shevuos Sheker and Shevuos Shav echad hein, that they are one and the same. And the Gemara explained that what the brisa actually means is that just like by Shevuos Sheker we say that there is Malchus, so too by Shevuos Shav we say that there is Malchus. And the Gemara had asked on the previous summit, but that's obvious. Both of them are lav and both of them are negative commandments, as Rashi mentioned. It's learned out from the Lo Yinake that we say Shevuos Shav is going to get Malchus, and so the Gemara says it's obvious. What does it need to be said for? And the Gemara answers, one might have thought, like Rav Papa said to Abaya, that maybe what Lo Yinaka means is it means Lo Yinaka Klal. It means the person will not be absolved at all, even with punishment, Kamash Malon. And so that's what it's teaching us, Kedeshani Lei, as he answered him, as he responded to him, that is not the case. So again, what the Brisa means to say is that there's Malchus not only by Shevuos Sheker, but by Shevuos Shav as well. And the Gemara continues with another answer. V'bay same, if you want, I could say, Keshem shemevi karban al sheker. What it means to say is as follows: just like one brings a karban on Shavuos Sheker, not talking about Malchus but karban, kach mevi karban al shav. So too a person brings a karban on a Shavuos Shav. Rabbi Akiva, and according to this, the Brisa would follow Rabbi Akiva. The mechayev l'sha'avar kilahabar. Rabbi Akiva is the one that says that a person is chayev to bring a karban on a shvuah l'sha'avar that's made in the past tense, just like on one that is made in the future tense. And Rashi explains, V'bay same, if you want, I could say, Hadakatani shav v'sheker achas, saying that which the Brisa says that Shavuos Shav and Shavuos Sheker are one. Lomar loch, it means to say to you as follows: Keshem shemevi karban al Shavuos Sheker, just like a person brings a karban on a Shavuos Sheker, which is in the future tense. Kach mevi karban al shav di'achalti v'lo achalti. So too the person brings a karban on a Shavuos Shav, which is in the past tense. For example, the person takes an oath that I ate, or an oath that I did not eat. Rabbi Akiva, and then the Brisa would follow Rabbi Akiva, because he says one is obligated to bring a karban in the Mishnah, both on past tense or on past tense, just like on future tense. And the Gemara continues, Meisvei, we have a question from the following brisa. This question is on what Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan said on the previous Amud. Rav Dimi said that Rabbi Yochanan said, what is considered to be a Shevuos Shav? That's a Shevuot that is said in the past tense, like achalti and lo achalti. And what's considered to be a Shevuos Sheker? That's if it's said in the future tense, ochel and lo ochel. And so the Gemara is now asking on that from this brisa. The brisa says, Eizuhi Shevuos Shav. What's considered to be a Shevuos Shav? That's nishba l'shanos asayadu la'adam. That's if a person takes an oath to change something that is well known to people. Somebody says the opposite of what people know to be factually true. And the Brisa continues, Shevuos Sheker, what's considered a Shevuos Sheker? That's nishba lahachlif. That's if a person, he takes an oath to switch. And Rashi explains, Nishba lahachlif means l'shanus eso emes b'shvuoso. He's changing the truth with his oath, meaning hainu l'shavar. That basically means you're making an oath in the past tense. Kagon achalti v'lo achal. For example, he takes an oath, I ate, but really he didn't eat. Or lo achalti, or I did not eat, v'achal, and he actually did eat. And so here you see, not like what Rav Dimi said that Rabbi Yochanan said in the previous Amud, because here Shevuos Sheker is not a shvuah in the future tense. It seems to be a shvuah in the past tense. And the Gemara continues and answers, Ema, what we'll have to say is nishba umachlif. It's not nishba lehachlif, but nishba umachlif. He takes an oath and he changes, which would be the future tense. Rashi explains, Ema nishba umachlif. Again, it's nishba umachlif. Nishba lasos, he takes an oath to do something. V'achar kach hechlif es devaro. And so then he switches. V'lo asa, he doesn't do it. O shalo lasos, v'asor, he takes an oath not to do, and he does. And we will note over here that the Ritva points out that this brisa doesn't seem to be only a question from the part about Shevuos Sheker, which is not like Rav Dimi Amar Rabbi Yochanan on the previous Amud, but the first part of the brisa also. The first part of the brisa says Shevuos Shav is nishba l'shanos asayadu la'adam. That does not seem like Rabbi Yochanan on the previous Amud either, because again, Rabbi Yochanan on the previous Amud said Shevuos Shav is actually a shvuah in the past tense, like achalti and lo achalti. That does not seem to be l'shanos asayadu la'adam. And so the Ritva actually has a different gear. So the Ritva says that it's just nishba l'shanos. That already can fit in with the idea of achalti v'lo achalti, and that's why the Gemara is specifically asking a question from the second part of the brisa. So that's the Ritva's explanation of what is going on over here. And the Gemara continues with another opinion regarding Shevuos Shav and Shevuos Sheker. Ki also Ravin Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah Amar Rabbi Yavo Amar Rabbi Yochanan. When Ravin came, he said that Rabbi Yirmiyah said that Rabbi Yavo said that Rabbi Yochanan said achalti v'lo achalti sheker. Actually, a Shevuos Sheker is in the past tense. The person says I ate, or the person takes an oath that I did not eat. So that's a Shevuos Sheker. Vaz harase milosi shavu b'shmila shakar. And the warning comes from the pasuk of lo Losi Shavu B'Shmila Shakar, again, that's a Shvuas Sheker. And Ochel V'lo Ochel, when it comes to the future tense, I'm going to eat or I'm not going to eat, so that actually comes from a different pasuk. That's over below Yachel Devaro. That's a transgression of below Yachel Devaro. Ve'ezu hi Shvuas Shav, and what is Shvuas Shav? That's Nishba L'Shanos Asayadu La'adam. That's if somebody takes an oath to change something that is well known to people, something, again, that people know to be factually untrue. And Rashi explains, L'shanos hasayadua, again, a person takes an oath and essentially states something that everyone knows is factually untrue. Rashi gives an example, al ha'ish sho'isha, let's say, for example, a person takes an oath that a man is actually a woman, so that would be something, again, that everybody knows not to be true. That's L'shanos es hayadua. And the Gemara continues, Amar Rav Papa says, Had Rabbi Avo, this statement of Rabbi Avo from Rabbi Yochanan, Lav beferish itmar, it was not stated explicitly, Elo michlala itmar, rather it was inferred. And Rashi explains, V'had Rabbi Avo, Had Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah le'el, Amar Rabbi Avo, the Amar mishmeid Rabbi Yochanan. That statement that we just had above, Rabbi Yirmiyah from Rabbi Avo, from Rabbi Yochanan, that achalti v'lo achalti, that in the past tense I ate, I did not eat, sheker, that's considered a shvuas sheker, that statement, Lav beferish Amar Rabbi Avo b'hai lishna. Rabbi Avo didn't state that explicitly. He didn't say that achalti v'lo achalti, that's shvuas sheker. Ela michlala itmar, rather it's inferred. Teshamei Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabbi Avo b'chada milsa da'ayri ba Rabbi Yochanan b'shvuas sheker. Rabbi Yirmiyah heard Rabbi Avo discussing something that Rabbi Yochanan was saying in terms of shvuas sheker. V'ukma Rabbi Avo b'achalti v'lo achalti, and Rabbi Avo said that the case is by achalti and lo achalti. Me'ahu klala, and from there that was like inferred. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah mishum Rabbi Avo. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, achalti v'lo achalti sheker. From there, Rabbi Yirmiyah said, from Rabbi Avo, that Rabbi Yochanan said that achalti v'lo achalti sheker. He understood that from that discussion, and the Gemara now brings this discussion. To Amar Ravidi Baravin, Amar Rav Amram, Amar Rav Yitzchak, because Ravidi Baravin says that Rav Amram says that Rav Yitzchak says, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, that Rabbi Yochanan says, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Mishum Rabbi Yossi Haglili, that Rabbi Yehuda says, in the name of Rabbi Yossi Haglili, Kol lo saseh shabatorah lav sheyesh bo ma'isa lokan olav. The rule is as follows: anytime you have a lo saseh in the Torah, a negative commandment, so if there's an action involved, so lokan olav, so then there's malchus. B'she'ein bo ma'isa, but if there is no action involved, ein lokan olav, so then there is no malchus. Chutz mi nishba umeimar umekalal es chavero b'shem, with the exceptions of the following, where there is no action but there is malchus, and the first exception is nishba, which is the one we're about to discuss. That's relevant. Meimar is a situation of tmura; somebody tries to substitute one animal for an animal for a consecrated animal, and then mekal es chavero b'shem is somebody curses his friend with the name of Hashem. And so nishba minolan, from where do we know that one who takes an oath, a false oath, for example, is going to get malchus even though there's no action? And so on that, Amar Rabbi Yochanan mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, Amar Krotz, because the pasuk says, Lo sisa es shem Hashem elokecho lashav ki lo yinake. It says that a person shouldn't take the name of Hashem in vain, and it says ki lo yinake. This is what was mentioned on the previous summit. Rashi mentioned as well in the previous summit that lo yinake is the source for the lav, for the malchus over here. We understand from this pasuk, bezin shel mala ein menaken osa. What the pasuk means is that the bezin shel mala, the bezdin above, they are not going to absolve the person from guilt. Avol bezin shel mata, but the bezin shel mata, the earthly courts, malken oso umenaken oso, they will give lashes, and then the person will be absolved. They will absolve him in that fashion. And so you see from there that there is malchus in this situation when it comes to Shavuot. Amar le Rav Papa li Abaya. So on this, Rav Papa says to Abaya, again, this was quoted above when the Gemara said on the previous summon, maybe one would think like Rav Papa said to Abaya. So Rav Papa says to Abaya, Dilma hachi kamar achmona. Maybe what the pasuk means is as follows: Ki lo yinake klal. Maybe it means the person will not be absolved at all, and there's no punishment, because even a punishment in the earthly court is not going to absolve the person. And so the Gemara says, Ich siv ki lo yinake kit kamar. If it would have said ki lo yinake, just say that, so then it would be like you said, the person's not absolved from guilt at all. But Hashlid siv ki lo yinake Hashem. But here it says that Hashem is not going to absolve. We understand that to mean Hashem hudeinu menaka. Hashem will not absolve the person of guilt. Avol bezdin shel mata, but the earthly court, malkin oso umenaken oso. They're going to give lashes, and they will absolve him in that fashion. And so therefore, again, we learn from there the idea that there's malchus by Shevuah. And the Gemara continues, Eshkechan Shevuos Shav, so we find that this is true by Shevuos Shav. This is what the Pasuk says, Lo siso es Shem Hashem Elokecha Lashav, Shevuos Sheker Minolan. Where do we know that this is true by Shevuos Sheker? Rabbi Yochanan Didei Yomar, Rabbi Yochanan himself says, Lashav Shtei Po'amim. It says Lashav 2 times. Im Eino Inyan L'Shevuos Shav. If you don't need to apply it to Shevuos Shav, we already know that. T'nei Inyan L'Shevuos Sheker. So then you can apply it to Shevuos Sheker. That's how we know that it is true by Shevuos Sheker. V'have bo Rabbi Avo. And Rabbi Avo, he asked on this, in terms of this whole discussion, Hai Shevuos Sheker Hechidam. He wanted to know, well, what exactly do we mean over here when we're talking about Shevuos Sheker? Ileima Shevuos Shelo Ochel V'Ochel. If we're going to say that the case is the person takes an oath not to eat and then he eats, and that's the subject of this discussion over here, that would not make any sense. Lav sheyesh bo maisu, that would be a negative commandment with an action, because there's the action of eating, which is the violation of the oath. So it cannot be that in this whole discussion about getting malchus by lav she'ein bo maisa, that the words Shevuos Sheker refer to that scenario. V'ela da'amar Shevuos she'ochel v'lo achel. So rather you'll suggest that maybe the case of Shevuos Sheker is the person takes an oath to eat and then he does not eat. So that would be a lav she'ein bo maisa, because there's no action. But that would not work either, because hai miloka, in that case, would there even be malchus? V'itmar, but it was stated, Shevuos she'ochel kikar zu hayom. Let's say a person takes an oath that he's going to eat this loaf today. V'yavar hayom, and the day passes, v'lo achel, and he doesn't eat it. So there it happens to be, everybody agrees for different reasons, but everybody agrees, Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, the Amri Tarvayu, both Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, they both say, Eino loka, that there's no malchus in this case. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Eino loka, mishum dehav elav shein bo maisa. Rabbi Yochanan says there's no malchus because that would actually be a lav shein bo maisa. It would be a negative commandment with no action. V'chol lav shein bo maisa in lokan olav. Anytime you have a lav shein bo maisa, there's no malchus. And the Gemara continues, Reish Lakish Amar, and Reish Lakish says, Eino loka, he doesn't get malchus. Why? Mishum dehavi hasra safek, because it's actually a warning in a situation of doubt. The reason why this is a hasra safek is because, again, the oath is that the person says, I'm going to eat the loaf today. So at every particular moment, he doesn't have to eat it at that moment, because he can eat it a little later in the day. So anytime he's being warned that he has to eat the loaf, it's really a hasra safek. The hasra safek lo shma hasra, and hasra safek is not considered a warning, and that's Reish Lakish's reason why there's no malchus in this case. And so again, we still have to identify what was going on in this discussion. What is Shevuos Sheker? And so here, in the context of this discussion, V'yamar Rabbi Avo said, Tehei b'achalti v'lo achalti. What we'll say is that Shevuos Sheker, that's talking about a situation of achalti and lo achalti, and that's how we see that Rabbi Avo was essentially saying within Rabbi Yochanan that Shevuos Sheker is a Shevuah in the past tense, as we said above. And the Gemara continues and asks, Umayshna, but what is the difference? And Rashi explains the question, Umayshna hach me ochel v'lo achal. What's the difference between this case and the case of ochel and then he didn't eat? Meaning to say, let's say a person takes a shvuah that he is going to eat and then he does not eat. So Rabbi Yochanan said above that that's a lav shein bo maisa, and lav shein bo maisa, there's no malchus. But in all these other cases of oaths, we're saying that it's a lav shein bo maisa and it still gets malchus. Habakulu lav shein bo maisa, and in all these cases, it's lav shein bo maisa. Why specifically in this case of the future tense, when the person takes an oath that he is going to eat and then he does not eat, why over there do we apply this idea that we say it's a lav shein bo maisa and there's no malchus? And the Gemara says, Amar Rava says, Befeirush ribsa Torah Shevuos Sheker dome l'shav, because when the Torah is including Shevuos Sheker and malchus, it has to be a case similar to a Shevuos shav. Mashav l'shavar, just like the case of shav is something in the past tense, av sheker nami l'shavar, so too the Shevuos Sheker that we're referring to has to be in the past tense. That's why the Shevuos Sheker in the future tense is considered a lav shein bo maisa with no malchus. And Rashi explains, Beferish ribsa Torah mida'afke b'loshen shav, because again, the word shav is used by the Shevuos Sheker. Mashav l'sha'avar, just like the Shevuos shav is in past tense, which is, as we said, nishba l'shanos as yadu la'adam, the person is taking an oath, changing something that is well known to people, saying something that is factually not true. Av sheker de l'sha'avar, so too the Shevuos Sheker, something in the past tense, it's rabboy l'malchus. That's when we say there's an inclusion for malchus v'lo l'sheker de l'habba, and not a Shevuos Sheker in the future tense. Umeyahu klala amar and again, it's from this whole discussion. That's why Rabbi Yirmiyah inferred from Rabbi Avo, he was able to understand that it's a chalti and lo a chalti. That's the case of Shevuos Sheker. And the Gemara continues, Eisvei Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabbi Avo. Rabbi Yirmiyah asks Rabbi Avo the following question. This is from a Mishnah coming up. Shavua shelo ochel kikar zu. A person takes an oath not to eat this particular loaf, and then he says it again. He repeats it. Shavua shelo ochalna, an oath not to eat it, and he repeats it again. Shavua shelo ochalna, an oath not to eat it. V'yochel, and he does eat it. Eino chayev elo achas. He's only chayev one. Zuhi shvuas bitoy. This is what is referred to as a shvuas bitoy. Shachayaven al zedona makos. That if a person violates it, he's liable. If he does it on purpose, he's liable to malchus. Ve'al shigagasa carbon ola v'yored, and if a person does it by mistake, so he's going to have to bring the carbon ola v'yored. And Rashi explains Shavua shelo ochalna lekamon mefarish b'pirkin. Later on in the parak it will explain lamali leminkat tlos shvuas. Why over here it has to have 3 oaths. So again, eno chayiv al achas is only chayiv 1. De'ein shvua chola al shvua, because one oath is not going to be chal on another oath. Tekevan denishba shvua rishon, and once he takes that first oath, havala shvua shniya lekayim es mitzvah. The second one just becomes a shvua to fulfill something that's already a commandment. Utanan b'masnis in the pater, and we learn in the Mishnah that it's pater in that case. And so in any case, the Gemara goes on to ask from this, the language of this Mishnah is zuhi. This is an example of shvuas bitoy where there's malchus and on shogeg there's carbon ola v'yored. So zuhi lemu'utei mai. So what are the words zuhi? What is that coming to exclude? Lemu'utei mai. What is it excluding? Zuhi is generally an exclusion. Lav lemu'utei achalti v'lo achalti delo lucky. Isn't it excluding the case of an oath in past tense? I ate and I did not eat, and it's saying zuhi. Over here you get malchus, and apparently by achalti and lo achalti, the person would not get malchus. That goes against what we just said above. And the Gemara says, lo no, lemu'ute achalti v'lo achalti mi carbon. We're not excluding achalti and lo achalti. We're not excluding that from the case of malchus. We're actually excluding that from carbon, meaning to say zuhi dal shigagasa carbon ola v'yored. This is an example of a case where if it's violated by mistake, there's a carbon ola v'yored, aval achalti v'lo achalti lo, but a situation of achalti lo achalti, that would not be the case. And for Rabbi Yishmael here, according to this approach, this Mishnah would follow Rabbi Yishmael. The Amar eno chayiv elo al ha'asid lavu. He says you're only chayiv, one is only chayiv the carbon on a situation where it was made in the future tense, not in the past tense. Avol milka lucky, but in fact there would be malchus. And Rashi explains lo no lemu'ute carbon. Really, we're excluding carbon. V'zui ashigagasakoi. The words zui in the Mishnah is going on the case of shogeg by mistake. Zui dal shigagasa carbon. This is an example of a case where if it's b'shogeg, there's a carbon. Avol shvua l'sha'avar less of a carbon. But a shvua that's taken in the past tense, there would be no carbon. For Rabbi Yishmael, he damar b'masisa eno chayiv ela alasa. This would follow the opinion of Rabbi Yishmael, who says in the Mishnah that a person is only liable on oaths, on shvuos that are made in future tense. And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chaf Aleph Amud Beis.